Assalamu alaikum and good evening, everyone. My name is Sheila Makhani, and as president of PMI Karachi, Pakistan chapter, I welcome you to the 14th episode of Readers Club and our special segment of Meet the Author. Actually, it's Meet the Authors, as we have two authors right now. We have started a journey of Readers Club in April 2020, and till date, it has also enabled us to reach out to participants from 46 different countries and speakers from 13 countries till now. Our today's book and discussion is Gen P, New Generation of Product Owners Who Care About Customers by Peter Monkhouse and Joanna Tivig. And we are fortunate to have them as presenters today. Let me introduce our first speaker and author, Peter Monkhouse. Peter is an experienced speaker, educator, and consultant with over 40 years of experience leading teams and organizations to deliver value through projects. Peter is currently co-founder of New Gen P, our training organization focused on strategy implementation and execution. He has been a keynote speaker around the world and delivered courses at Ryerson at the University of Toronto and the University of Calgary. Peter is an active volunteer with PMI for over 20 years, serving on the PMI Board of Directors for 6 years, and was the chair of the 2012 PMI Board and the PMI Educational Foundation Board of Directors. Our second presenter is Joanna Tivig. Joanna has been an instructor for the University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies for over a decade, teaching courses of product and project management. She is currently co-founder of New Gen P. She has been speaking at various events and has organized Agile Software Development Conference in 2018 and 2019. She has over 15 years of corporate experience leading agile software development initiatives in financial services and applying project management practices. With this, I invite Peter and Joanna to start their session. Please write your questions in the chat window. They will take the questions during and after the presentation. Our Facebook Live audience can write their questions in the comment section. We will take their questions from there. Thank you. Over to you, Joanna and Peter.
Thank you, Sheena, and we're pleased to be here joining you on this Saturday evening. So thank you very much for the opportunity for us to talk to you a little bit about our book, Gen P. So what we're going to do is we'll start off with a little bit about how Joanna and I got together to write this book, and then we'll start talking a little bit about the book as we go through each of the chapters. So, you know, it seemed in some ways a bit of an unlikely couple to get together to write the book and write a book on Product Owner. As Sheena went through my introduction, I was born and raised in Canada and I'm presently living in Toronto. And as Sheena mentioned, I teach at the University of Toronto. And that's in fact where Joanna and I met, as she is also a teacher at the University of Toronto. But you know, the journey is a little bit stranger than that, because I was, as Sheena mentioned, very much of a project manager and very interested in managing projects. It was some 25 odd years ago that my boss came to me and said, "Hey, Peter, you're a project manager, get yourself certified." And I had no idea what he was talking about. This led me to find PMI and the PMP, and I got my PMP certification. And as was noted, I became an active volunteer in PMI. And when I was on the board of directors of PMI, PMI was talking, and still does, about how projects help organizations deliver strategy. And to a certain degree, I think that's very true, that it is projects that are required to create products that will change an organization, that will allow an organization to introduce its products into new markets or create new products or to change the way it does its business internally. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on this session. But I realized that the part that PMI was missing with this was products, and that it was actually the product that would deliver value to customers, and it's through that value that we get benefits. So that's the perspective I came to came to product management and product ownership. And it happened about a little over 2 years ago that Joanna and I were updating a course that we both teach at the University of Toronto around leading projects in organizations, where we had a section on strategy. And we started talking, and I started sharing my thoughts about why we needed to include this section on strategy, and that we should be focusing to educate the students of the course that products were an important part to understand if they wanted to be successful project managers. So Joanna, how did you get here in Toronto from Romania?
So I came to Toronto. We landed in Toronto almost 20 years ago from Romania. We immigrated. So my husband and I, back then, we were successful, young individuals in our country, but we wanted to explore other countries, and we thought about Canada. And there was an exodus from Romania to Canada at that point in time. So we applied, and here we are. Like we never thought that we would stay so long. So we came here, we said we would try to see how it is, but we loved it. We made new friends, and we had our kids here. So I have 3 kids, and this is their home. And of course, they can go wherever in this world, but I think they consider Canada their home, and they're very comfortable here. So as Peter mentioned, I've been teaching for U of T since 2009. And at some point in time, as we were working on this project together, Peter and I, and we were talking about, how we do things, my background in project management. So I started in project management first, but then because of introduction of Agile project management, I transitioned more into a product development role. So that changed my perspective a little bit, because as a project manager, you're very focused on the process and trying to get the project out the door by focusing so much on making sure that the process is perfect. But then as I transitioned to this product development role, I realized that the process can be perfect, but if you don't have a perfect product for your customer, the customer will not buy it. So that means you do have to focus on the process, but you have to focus on the product as well. So these were our discussions, as you can imagine, Peter and I talking about strategy and how strategy needs to develop the product, and products will be the ones delivering the strategy, and projects will be enablers. So it's great to have good projects there. So we were just chatting, and then we got together and said we have to write this book. So this is how it started.
So yes, so we said we have to write a book, but how do you go about writing a book? It seems pretty daunting at times. You have some ideas. Well, it turned out that I had a colleague through PMI, my PMI contact who's here in Toronto, who had been after me to write a book for a while. So I said, oh yeah, sometime, mañana, later. But when Joanna started getting so enthusiastic about this, I thought, well, maybe we should talk to John and see how he goes around to write a book. Now, he had a formula, approach to do this, call for an approach, that kind of broke it down into, said, starting off, think about doing 8 chapters and do 4 sections in a chapter. So it broke this thing, let's write a big book. He suggested writing a little bit of a smaller one, but also broke it down to manageable pieces, which was really kind of nice, because we could then see that, okay, so we have 32 sections to write, and that doesn't seem so bad. Each one maybe 1,000, 1,500 words. And so that's what started us on our journey of doing this. And we started in mid-September 2019, and we launched the book at the end of November of 2019. So it was a lot of work. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of discussion, but we got the book out, and it's now, as you know, available on Amazon.
And one of the things that we should mention is that without even realizing, we became product owners. So we basically experienced developing a book and a product through writing that book and talking about everything, like we wanted to put in the book, we could actually apply in the product development, which was our book. So it was very interesting journey.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, as Joanna mentioned, she has a family, she teaches, and I teach. My children are all grown up, but we had other things to do. So we weren't exactly, sending ourselves off and blocking us out of the world. We were very much still trying to juggle ongoing activities that we were doing to keep the lights on, so to speak. So what I'd like to do, or what we plan to do for the next half hour or so, now we've talked about the origin story, is to take you through the book and talk about each of the 8 chapters in the book. So one of the fun things we had, and one of the more interesting things that I remember, is this discussion that we had is, how do we organize our thoughts? We had started thinking about some of the skills and competencies that product owners and product managers needed, and how do we organize them? So Joanna came up with this really, really neat way of doing it. And we came up with this acronym, ACHIEVE. Right now, unfortunately, ACHIEVE was only 7 letters, and we have 8 chapters. So we have a first chapter, Challenge the Status Quo, to give a bit of an overview of why we need to do this. But this came out our theme of the book, right? As product owners and product managers, we want to achieve success. Achieve success for our product, achieve success for our organization, to help it achieve its strategy, and achieve success, I'll get it right, success personally. So as we go through this, we will start off with the first chapter, which is we're going to alternate between the chapters. I don't think we actually wrote a chapter each. I can't remember which ones they are. We subsequently have developed training courses, and by then we sort of took ownership of different chapters. I have the odd chapters. I'm the odd person. Joanna has the even chapters. So we'll alternate as we go through. So I'll talk next about the challenge, the status quo. The A stands for agility for business, a really hot topic these days. So we may get in, we'll go, as I said, for about half an hour. So it'll give us time for discussion. We may want to talk a little bit more about that. I'll come back and talk about crash the challenges in chapter 3. Joanna will talk about hone the teams, so talking about some of the skills to develop your product team in chapter 4. I'm back in Iterate to make it happen, chapter 8, talking about the iterative product development approach, one we think is extremely critical in today's age. Then Joanna will talk about effective ownership, what it means to have ownership, true ownership of our product. I'm back for chapter 7, value sustained delivery, talking about how we can ensure that our product is sustainable and will continue to deliver value over the long term. And then we'll wrap up with the final E, excel as a product owner, where Joanna will talk about how we can develop our skills as product owners and product managers. So that's the organization and the structure for the book. So maybe it wasn't the best way to organize it, or maybe it was, but certainly we have this theme of looking for you to achieve success. Okay, so let's get started right away with chapter 1. So chapter 1, challenge the status quo. So this is a chapter where we felt to start off the journey as a product owner, we have to think about, why is product ownership important, and so important in today's world. So in the chapter, we start off with stories about products that are failing. I think the one that I find the most interesting one, and it's the story we start off the chapter with, is with Kodak. So Kodak, going back in the 1980s, was one of the top companies in the US. It was in the top 10 on the New York Stock Exchange. A highly successful company. You know, they were the dominant player in photography, right? Producing cameras and film and paper. Remember photographic film and having to get it developed and all that stuff and chemicals and so on. But many people don't realize it was actually an engineer at Kodak that developed the digital camera. And I can't remember the exact year when he did it, but it was in the 90s, I think, if I remember correctly. He developed the digital camera and was very impressed by this, and in fact, sent the decision about the digital camera went right up to the board of directors. And the Kodak board of directors did not see how they could make money with a digital camera. And they basically stopped any further work on it. Because after all, Kodak made its money by selling paper and developing chemicals to develop pictures from film. If they have a digital camera, there's no money to be made. Well, little did Kodak know that, in fact, their customers didn't really like having to buy film and wait for a week or two to get it developed and have it on pictures. They much rather have a digital picture that they could take and use and take pictures right away and send it to their friends. Kodak did not understand that. They weren't listening to their customers. And of course, Kodak's in bankruptcy. In fact, interestingly enough, I think one of their main revenue streams right now is off the patent rights from a digital camera. So Kodak's not alone. I mean, there's many other companies. The Blockbuster and their film rental business is gone. In Canada, we have BlackBerry, who had a very popular cell phone, which is also now a near shell of itself. There's the retail stores of Sears. Robot is one of the larger ones that's struggling. Many of the retail markets are. The taxi cab industry with Uber. I mean, the list goes on and on of products that are failing and ultimately companies that are failing as well. So what we have to think about is that as a organization, and I started talking about this a little bit earlier on, this idea of the strategy implementation circle, where we start off, an organization will start off with their strategy, and most organizations do a good job at developing their strategy, but they have a trouble delivering their strategy or implementing it. For those of you who have been following the PMI publications, my friend Ricardo Vargas for the last 4 years has been heading up their Brightline initiative, which has been talking about how organizations need to focus on execution, on implementing their strategy. And that's what the second section is, delivery no, is organizations are struggling delivering their strategy. So what we will argue is that for an organization is that they have to develop their strategy, then you develop strategic objectives, then you have strategic initiatives, which are projects by any other name. But you can't stop there by just having the right project at the right time. That project has to produce great products. It has to produce the products that will deliver value to your customers. And through the feedback you get from your customers, that's when you'll know if you'll achieve your strategic benefits. That will then feed back into the strategy, and you can adapt your strategy based on the feedback that you're receiving, whether you are getting benefits or not. I mean, all feedback is good. If you're not getting good feedback, if customers aren't buying your product, then that tells you that maybe your strategy needs to be updated, or you've picked the wrong strategic initiatives. So this is the idea that we have to keep in mind as we start implementing and executing on our strategy, is we have this cycle of constantly trying new products, new services, or trying them in new markets, trying to do things different ways, getting feedback and adapting that as we go through. And that's what we talk about in our next section on Take Your Product on a Journey. Chapter 1 ends with an explanation of our ACHIEVE acronym, which I've already given you, as being the outline for the rest of the book. So with that, Joanna, over to you to start talking about the first A, which is agility for business.
Thank you, Peter. And I guess you mentioned already that agility is a hot topic. We've been talking about agility lately a lot. We have also session coming up on projectmanagement.com. Agility in a nutshell, next month, I think it is.
Yeah.
Where we would get deeper into agility. And the one thing that we wanted people to understand is what is this agility and why we need it. And it doesn't have to be in for-profit organizations. It could be in not-for-profit organizations as well, because we see how the world is changing. So even the not-for-profit or governmental organizations, they need the agility. We see that live with COVID-19 vaccinations, how the government needed to adopt more agile ways of working in order to deliver vaccine faster in the arms of people. So this is something that we've been talking about in our book as well. And the reason why that's why we're starting with this is that basically organizations are failing to grow. They are failing to basically satisfy customers, and they see a lot of their products being canceled or retired. And the question was like, why is that? So through examples, through different scenarios, we kind of uncover these organizations and what they've been doing right and what they've been doing wrong. Of course, we talk about IKEA and their agility model and how they managed to stay afloat and how they changing their models as they go, which is something that it's very interesting, especially in the retail industry. So the other thing that we focused in this chapter was on feedback. So having customer feedback these days is amazing. So look at us live on Facebook with people watching and providing feedback live. That feedback stays on. It doesn't get deleted. So organizations are faced with a lot of feedback, positive or negative, like you are putting, we're putting ourselves out there, which creates also that pressure for organizations to incorporate that feedback into their products and release changes to the products, because customers are watching, customers are commenting if you're not doing that. So that's when we came up with the 3 R's of listening, relate, reflect, and reshape. And this is a concept that we've been testing. We've been talking about it in various events, and we got very positive feedback, because this is a simple 3-step to basically understand how to listen to the customer, how to relate to what they are saying by putting yourselves in the position of the customer, and then basically reflecting with your organizations and other stakeholders what would be the best action to take, and then basically taking the action at the end to do it and communicating back to the customer that you're doing something for them. So those are things that could definitely help you achieve agility. And at the end of the day, keep it simple and complicated. So we talk about the complexity of the organizations and how you can decomplexify your organizations as well. So that's another concept that we are going through in this chapter.
Thank you, Joanna. I really found, this idea of doing agile and being agile is an important concept to move forward, as we have to keep challenging ourselves to how to do things differently, how to be more innovative and creative. Okay, on to chapter 3, crash the challenges. So in this chapter, we were looking at some of the challenges that we have as product owners that were introduced in chapter 1 to explore them a little bit further. I noticed in the chat, people talk, a couple of chats about nonprofits need agility as well. Absolutely. And we tried very hard to, in our book, to be generic and talk about organizations as our concepts will apply for-profit, nonprofit, and governmental organizations. they all need to think about products and product ownership. I should also add, we are using the word product, but we are going to take the more expanded definition where products include services and results, just as the definition of a project does out of the PMBOK guide. So chapter 3, crash the challenges. So first thing is how as product owners do we help our product to be successful? So the first thing we want to talk about was, well, where's my boss? Cute title to say delegate. That we have a team that's supporting us. That we need to be able to delegate and delegate efficiently to the team, whether they report to us, whether they're our colleagues, even we have to learn how to delegate upwards to our bosses. So that's the first thing, is the importance of delegation. Second is to overcome some of the unknowns, be able to listen to the feedback from customers and to be able to explore what we don't know, try, experiment, innovate, be creative. Next is and I guess, so overcoming the unknown, creative, this is where we look at putting in organizational change and thinking about how we need to introduce change in the organization. And we spend a little bit of time talking about 3 approaches how change is done: evolution, transition, and transformation. And there's pros and cons to each one of these. And it really will depend on your situation of which approach do you need to deal with. As we have worked with companies who are trying to look at introducing products in a new way and doing things using some of the iteration techniques that we'll talk about a little bit later on. This is much more of a transformational approach where we're not doing small incremental change, which is as a transition, right? Or you could also argue this could be an evolution as they are evolving and doing some sort of radical change. We also talk about the importance of culture. And I think some of the comments, I had to smile when I saw the comments around nonprofits, talk about how nonprofits need to have this idea of agility, of how in many ways nonprofits have quite an interesting culture, which makes it more challenging for them to change. And as a product owner, we have to recognize that we are going to be faced with cultures. I love the Peter Drucker quote that culture is the way things get done around here. No, sorry, that's not the one. Culture definition of the way things get done around here. The quote is, the culture eats strategy for breakfast. That in fact, if you cannot change an organization's culture or a person's culture, then you're not going to get them to do things differently, which could impact the way that your product is received. So as a product owner, we have to think about how do we change the culture of our organization to make our product successful? How do we change the culture of our customers to accept our product? And potentially, how do we change the culture of, or create a culture of our project team to allow the product to be successful? So on the right-hand side, you can see we got a little grid here about different types of culture that could exist in a organization. And, one of the things that's important is to make sure you understand where your product fits in, your product team fits in, where your organization fits in, and where your customer fits in on the culture. So a clan culture being very much of a supportive culture, a family type culture, hierarchical, the command and control culture. A docracy being one of what we say, Joanna, for this one, right? For docracy, which my mind's gone blank. Your turn to help me out.
Democracy is when you do things ad hoc, right? So when you have basically a lot of challenges in the market and you have to react quickly. So it's basically in the same line that we've been talking about having that agility to change right away. So these are organizations that you can see they can change their business models, like we talked about, going from producing spirits to producing hand sanitizers, for example.
Great, thank you. And then, of course, market is focusing on success and winning in the marketplace, however that's defined. Thank you, Joanna. Okay, and the last section of this talks about benefits. Now, in order for an organization to be successful, they have to get benefits, whether that be more money, better profit, or higher revenue, better profit, lower cost, more customer satisfaction, better brand, whatever the benefits are. So we talk a little bit about the importance of identifying benefits and realizing benefits.
And we've seen some of the not-for-profit organizations adopting this adhocracy culture because they have to change. So based on what their volunteering needs are, so they have to change. Whereas the government is more in the hierarchy culture. Where there is more process, more governance, so you need to go through the ranks.
Yeah, and the question Said asked, is it possible for an organization to have multiple cultures? Absolutely, especially with large organizations. We've definitely seen that they will have different cultures. But what the challenge we have as a product owner is to recognize the culture that our company has or our department has, the culture that's required by the team, the culture by the customer, and trying to make sure we get a way that they can all work together in a way that's all focused on the product success. So, if you're looking for, as Joanna was talking about, if we're looking for an organization, a product team which is much more agile, has autocracy, will adapt very quickly, but you're in a hierarchical organization, you're not going to be successful. So either you have to change your product and your approach, or find a different, or convince the bosses to let that department start shifting into being also more of a adhocracy organization. Anything else you want to add, Joanna, on this?
Yeah, and I think we have a question there. Is it possible that an organization has a hybrid culture where all these four sectors are merged together? For sure. I mean, every department, if you have large organizations, remember that culture starts with leadership. So the type of leader you will have in one department will drive that culture for your organization. So you see that sometimes you move from one department to another and there is a completely different culture there. And you wonder why, inside the same organization is because the leaders actually drive that culture. And that's something that you want to keep in mind.
We're almost getting a little ahead of ourselves, Joanna. Let's go on to chapter 4, where we'll talk about culture and leadership as well.
Yes, so this is when we started thinking about the team, because I think the customer is very important from a company's growth perspective, but we have to remember who's actually doing the product, who's working on the product. And the best thing that you want to have is make sure that your team is skilled to do the work that they are supposed to do. They are developed, you continue to invest in their development, in their trainings, and basically nurturing the team and motivating them to deliver success. So we introduced this concept about smart teams, and each acronym means something that is very important for the team. And we also generated some examples in terms of how you get there to create those smart teams, the level of performance that you want to have in the organization, and basically introducing also the leadership traits or characteristics from a product development and product management perspective. We also discussed about change and how you deal in different situations of change and the type of styles that you want to use, the type of leadership styles. And basically we touch back into the culture and the different cultures that we have there, combined to the leadership styles that you want to use, and linking it back to the 4 quadrants that we talked about. I know there was a question there about explain deliverable versus outcome slash output. I don't know if we want to do it now or later, but I can give you an example because deliverable to me, especially, is a result, right? So a deliverable is like building the fence around my house. The outcome of that is the actual value that we're getting from that building the fence. So if I have small kids, which I have, I prefer to keep them inside the yard. So that's why I'm building that fence. So the outcome, which is output plus value, is the fact that I can have my kids inside the yard. So the result of that deliverable, or the benefit.
Sorry, Joanna, if I can just add to that, the way I look at this is Joanna and I are both teachers, right? So an output is how many people attend our classes. You're there, you attend. An outcome is you pass a test, you get a grade, right? So that shows how much you comprehend material. The impact is you've used the knowledge you've got on the class and from the class to get a new job, to get a promotion, to get a new job. That's the impact to advance your career. So that's how we think about it. So outputs are very easy. They're easy to count. They're things to count. Number of people in the class. The outcomes, a little harder, but not so bad. You know, in my example, grades. Impacts tend to be a lot harder to see. They tend to be having to follow people over time. I also thought, Joanna, before we move on, we should, you mentioned SMART, and the acronym is used in many different ways and different forms. So for us, we looked at SMART as being the S being shared goals, the M being minimum supervision, A being accountable, the team is accountable for their work, R is being respectful, and the last one, T, being trustworthy. Okay, and we spent more time on the culture, as the graphic will show here, talking about trust and how trust works. Was it here? Maybe that's another chapter. Anyway, okay. So just a reminder for those that are on Facebook Live, just put your comments in the chat, and Selena will be watching them and adding those as we go along, and enjoying the chats, the questions that you have as we go along here. So just keep them coming, please. Okay, on to chapter 5, iterate to make it happen. So we spend time in this chapter describing what we call an iterative product development approach, which is based on this idea of an agile approach where you want to start off your product with an idea and then coming up with a proof of concept and prototypes to create a minimum viable product. Remember, the minimum viable product is the minimum number of features that will deliver value to the customer. And it doesn't have to be complete, it just has to be able to deliver value. The idea behind an MVP is to get feedback from the customer to see whether or not they are getting value and what value they're getting. An MVP that customers don't like is just as valuable as one as they do like, because you're getting feedback and then you can adapt as you go around, and hence the circle showing this iterative approach. You can take the feedback you've received and change the features, add different features, remove features to get them that one where the value hits, it occurs. As you then get through your MVP, then you want to continuously deliver value, continuously get feedback from your customers that you put into a product backlog, prioritize the product backlog through iteration planning to define what features you want to put in the next release of your product, build it, release it, get more feedback, and keep repeating this on future releases. The idea behind listening to customer feedback, and I would say it's not only customer feedback, you want to look at feedback from your own team, from their observations, from what your competitors are doing, from what the changes are in the marketplace, through changes in technology and new business models, and asking yourself as a product owner, what can I do to add new features to my product that will ensure that I continue to deliver value to my customers? I take advantage of new technology that people have developed. I'm able to respond to what competitors are doing. So you want to continue to get feedback in this broader sense to move along and go through and continue to deliver value. You know, what I've seen in my career, especially on internal products, is that the project will develop the product and then dump it off at the customer and go away. And the product just sits there and no one's there supporting it. No one's asking the internal customers how it's doing. And then at some point in time, it breaks, major catastrophe, something's not working. So panic, get it fixed, get it updated, and then walk away. And that's not a good way to run a business. You're not letting people understand the feedback and understand how to improve the product. So, you know, you get all these workarounds and inconsistencies and so on. So that's Iterate to make it happen. And we go through the details here and then talk about the MVP and what makes a good minimum valuable product and what doesn't. Comments, Joanna, before we move on to chapter 6?
No, I think it's good. I mean, somebody asked about the minimum viable product. I think you explained is the minimum set of features that you want to put in the hands of the customers in order for them to provide feedback to you. So this is a concept that has been used a lot. If we look at some of the companies, they start with small features, small products. We have in the book the examples of Zappos. Zappos is an American company who is selling shoes online. And basically they started with a website and 10 pairs of shoes. And then they evolved from there to the point that they were bought by Amazon and they had 2 million customers and 2 billion in sales. So it's something that you can do, start small and then become big.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of the Zappos story, because I love that one. Because not only did he only have 10 pairs of shoes, he didn't have any shoes. The 10 pairs he had were pictures he took of the shoes from the local shoe store down the street from where he lived. And so if someone ordered these shoes on his website, he walked down to the store, bought them, shipped them to the customer. And then if they didn't like them, he just got the customer to ship them back to him, and he took it back and returned it to the store. And the store was perfectly okay with this. He asked them if he could do this, and they said, sure. They didn't think anyone would buy shoes online. Well, again, listen to your customers, right? Zappos did, shoe stores didn't. Okay, Joanna, on to chapter 6.
So getting to faster to the end, but chapter 6 is about ownership. So we talk about ownership as a function around product owners. So we can definitely think about the ownership function in a project environment. But the fact that you want to have an owner for your product is fundamental, because if you looked at that iterative life cycle, you want to have somebody taking care of everything from the idea to basically continuing throughout the product and evolving your product until the product is retired. So we talk about the 5 P's of ownership: pride, power, promotion, protection, and passion. And for each of them, providing examples, you know, like showing the pride. How do you, when you own something, you are very proud of what you have. And not only that you are proud, you're investing and you're taking care of that. So protecting what you own, showing passion for what you own. And if you think about, you know, a house, a car, and how you take care of that. So definitely, you know, from that ownership perspective, we see that people who feel that they own products and then they also take care of them better, they promote them better, they basically are accountable for those decision making. So that's the power element, to feel the commitment that you can actually make the decisions around which features you want to release. And which features will be beneficial to your customer, and then showing that passion about it, and, you know, trying to promote the product, trying to build these marketing campaigns to get the product out there in front of the customers. The other thing that we talked about in the book was the different hats the product owners wear. And think about this, this is a book about the new generation. So it's a new generation of workers, and in this particular case of product owners. So no longer we have the luxury to focus on our function and basically understand only what's in our job descriptions. As a product owner, we have to to open our eyes around and look at the big picture. So these 6 hats are showing like what are the other skills we need to have as product owners. So not only from a product management perspective throughout the entire life cycle, but analyzing the business and basically analyzing data sometimes, because data is very important these days to tell you how you can continue. The technologists, a lot of product owners, they are very interested in technology to understand the solutions, and sales and sponsoring. So making sure that we have the right budgets, we have the right engagement from the executive team on our products. And finally, of course, marketing, a huge component in selling the products and making them better. And then we ended up with the circle of trust. So we were talking about the trust of capability, trust of communication, and trust of character. So these are 3 components of trust that we talk about.
Great. You know, it's almost with a product owner, we are running our own little business, right? So we have to think about that and being able to think about all aspects of the product, not just getting the product developed, but marketing it, supporting it, collecting feedback, dealing with customers. Okay, onto our chapter 7, value sustained delivery. So this is really bringing together some of the elements of what makes a great product. We use some of the themes behind Deming and PDCA and the modern quality around continuous improvement, which of course is product development, and the voice of the customer, which is the feedback parts already come in. But the other parts we want to talk about was making sure your products are reliable and sustainable. So sustainability, making sure that they can do the work they're supposed to over the long term, and also think about the full supply chain of making sure that you are using good sustainable practices, right? Quality, this is the reliability, and there's a lot of ilities that come in, flexibility, serviceability, maintainability, can't remember what they all are, but thinking about that will also help with customer satisfaction, but also allow your product to be more sustainable. In the third element circle, you see there's delivery, and this is where we introduce the concept of value stream mapping, and the idea that think about the process to deliver, to make, manufacture, or create your product or service, and then deliver it to your customers. Where are there points of waste? How can you eliminate the waste to make sure that you're always delivering value? So we go through an examples of talking about looking at the processes that you're using and thinking about asking yourself and challenging yourself to figure out ways to eliminate waste, right? So value stream mapping. Again, we come back and talk a little bit about how feedback will guide you to see if you are in fact delivering value to the customer and delivering a reliable, sustainable product. And lastly, this idea of continuous improvement, always making sure that you're adding more value, you're looking at how your customers are using your product in order that you can continue to have a product that will last for a long time, be successful for a long time. Okay, and let's wrap up with chapter 8, Joanna.
Perfect. So basically, we wanted to leave our readers with the thought that this is a journey, and this is something that we all should be aware of doing, thinking about like how we can continue our careers, how we can develop, what would be the best things that a product owner should skill themselves in. We talk about the secret sauce of 5 tips. We have them here for you, but it's basically we run through an example as well. And it's very important that you think about your product, you think about the customer, and you think about the team. So basically having that combination, and if you get the right recipe for the 3 pieces, you are a great product owner in the end. And basically, what is the value? We keep talking about value in our book. So what is the value of a product owner, and how you can elevate yourself to the next level? What's the career path from a product ownership perspective? Thinking that some business analysts transition to product owners, but then what's the next step? Once you become a product owner, what can you become next? So focusing on that journey for the product owners, and making sure you have the right ingredients to become a great product owner and to succeed in your career.
Now, one of the things we mentioned in this chapter is Stephen Covey about the 7 habits of successful people. And one of the ones he talks about is sharpening the saw, which means taking time for yourself to continue to invest in yourself and to grow and acquire new skills and to be well rested and so on. So somewhat look at yourself as a product owner. How can you be a better product owner as well? Okay, so we'll just leave you with some final thoughts here about the book. As we mentioned, my friend John helped us out. That's a picture of him here. This was at our book launch in the end of November 2019. We have updated the book a couple of times since, and Joanna keeps reminding me that we need to do maybe a bit more of a major overhaul. There's some things that we've certainly found from feedback from our readers that we would like to include in the book. So hopefully that will come out later this year. We're very pleased to see ourselves up on the bestseller list in project management and business management books. So thank you for the support for that. The book has been used in people from all areas. So product owners in all types of organizations, profit and non-profit organizations. We found it useful for people launching their business or becoming an entrepreneur. As I said, we have to almost think of product owners as being a little bit of an entrepreneur. For managing products that are software, but also beyond software. We had an opportunity to share some of our thoughts with Procter Gamble here in Toronto. Arguably one of the more successful product management companies who are really focused around their products. So they were interested in learning from us about what some of our thoughts are. So this isn't an IT only, this is for all industry sectors. A couple of the universities here in Canada are using our book for their courses, as well as some other course providers are also using our book, which we're thrilled to see the acceptance of. So before, I know looks like we've got about 30 minutes here for questions or so before we wrap up. I do have some thoughts to wrap up, including we've got a couple of offers for you. So, but let's open it up for more of a discussion and questions that you may have that you want to ask us. So please do so. For those of you who are here with us live on Zoom, you can use the chat box. For those on Facebook Live, please put in the comments and we'll look at those comments and bring them over. So over to you for your questions.
So I think we have a question about, I thought I saw something about the minimum viable service for not-for-profit organizations. So, I mean, in not-for-profit, there are services, but there are also products, because sometimes I work for a not-for-profit and we organized conferences. So for us, those conferences were products, because we treated them as as we treat any other product, from having the idea of running a conference to the point where we get feedback from the customers, we develop, we run the conference, and then we basically complete that conference. And the fact that you would say, oh, it's just an event management piece, it wasn't like that, because even after the conference is done, then you continue to keep people engaged and show that momentum, sharing videos after the conference, and making sure that we added additional webinars as follow-ups. And so it basically became a product for us.
I think this idea of thinking about product owners as being the entrepreneur, and you're trying to provide a customer experience. So whether you do that through a product or through a service, it's the same thing. And I know sometimes it's harder when you think of a service because it's not necessarily tangible, or you can't sort of give it to someone, but it's still around their experience, right? Still about how you can help them solve one of the problems that they have, or achieve a goal that they're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think there's another question here, Joanna. So where did it go? About, does a product owner need to be a technical or a techno-functional person?
Well, in most cases, the product owner needs, depending on the project. I mean, if a project is a data migration project, then you definitely need a product owner there that is technical. But for most of the products that we have out there, the product owner will definitely be the business person, knowing the product the best and having that relationship with the customer. So the criteria for selection for the product owner is who's the closest to the customer, who understands the customer the best. And basically that lead will take you there to identify your product owners.
Yeah, I agree, Joanna. I get asked this question about project managers. How technical do they have to be? Well, it depends on the project, right, to a large degree. But largely, especially on a product owner, we want the person to be able to understand the business and why the product is being produced, how it's going to help the organization be successful, and how it's going to help the customer be successful. So yes, you do need to know a little bit about the technical part of the product, but you should have people on the product team who do that part. You should not be a highly technical person. Next question we have here is, sometimes we see the role of a product owner presented as a subject matter expert. So these roles are the same thing or different?
Yes, that's a great question. Yes. So less mature organizations, of course, you see the product owner being a subject matter expert. And of course, that's something that it's good as well. As we said, we want these product owners to be subject matter experts. But the whole idea is to have the product owner assigned to the team 100%. Usually what's happening is that subject matter experts come in and go out. So they are called whenever we need their expert opinion. For the product owner, the best successful projects that you want to have is where the product owner is assigned to the project 100%. And they are there to provide guidance, to make decisions, and to guide the team which features they should focus on, and basically discuss with stakeholders and the customer about the trade-offs and what should be first, the priorities. So that's where you want that product owner to be with the team.
I would say one of the things that led us to write the book, besides the strategy argument, was the fact that on many agile teams and some agile methodologies, the product owner is described as the voice of the customer. And we want to argue in the book that the product ownership goes beyond that, is really owning the life cycle of the product and trying to own it in such a way that you can extend the life cycle of the product. So to that point, they're not just a subject matter expert, someone who knows a little bit about the customer or use the product. They really have to use, we really are trying to advocate in our book that a product owner may look more like a business owner or an entrepreneur. Um, okay, so next question, Joanna, is another one that we're running across here, is about the product owner versus the product manager and how these roles are different or similar.
Right, and we had a bit of a fun when we put together, a comparison between the product owner and the product manager. We put it out there on LinkedIn. We got a lot of feedback. And what we've noticed is that these roles in most of the organizations are really interchangeable. It's just, like a title thing where sometimes, product owners are called product managers or vice versa. I see that a lot, product owners being hired as product owners, but then they transition into a product management role. So the whole idea is that the product owner, as I said, stays with the team and focuses on that product. So it's basically at the execution level of that product. The product manager elevates themselves to look at the entire roadmap. So basically it's a bigger picture role where you want to have these managers to not only manage the roadmaps, but manage also the entire ecosystem around that product. So maybe sometimes is the interrelation with another product. So those would be things that the product manager will look at.
Absolutely. And we've also seen other titles up there, product directors, product leaders. Organizations seem to be very innovative and creative about their titles. Sometimes I wish they would be as much about their products, solve our problems. Okay, next question that we have. Is it necessary to have a product vision to be successful as a product owner? I'll turn this one over to Joanna as well, but all I will say, I'll start off by saying that, no, I think this is one of the things that we've gotten feedback is that in our book, we'd like to add, in particular, the value proposition canvas we're looking at putting into chapter 1 of the book. So this is a canvas came out with Alex Oslerud and Pierre Bernard. I don't think I got Alexander's name pronounced correctly. So the author of the Lean Business Canvas, where he really tries to get people to focus on the value proposition. So what problem are you trying to solve for your customer? What are their pains and gains and how your product's trying to address them? So out of that, you can look at having a product journey map and a product roadmap, as Joanna just mentioned. And those are things that as if you're going to own a product and truly own it, you're going to be worrying about and thinking about and updating based on the feedback, not just customer, but overall feedback, as I mentioned earlier, we talked about. Joanna, do you want to add further to that?
Yes, and I think the short answer is yes. It's very important to have that product vision, not only for the team to just follow your thoughts, but also even if you start with a minimum viable product, you want to know how to start, what will be the foundational pieces that you want to do. And the one thing that we are seeing these days, because everything is so fluctuant and so changing, allow yourselves to have the product vision flexible. So basically knowing where you're going, so knowing the future, but just, how you get there and how you measure and how you want to, to get to that vision, be very flexible. And sometimes you get to a different vision and that's fine as well, because as long as the customer is happy, that's what matters.
Absolutely. And I would say, and you're delivering benefits to the organization too, right? Happy customer, happy boss. Got to keep them both happy if you can. How important is the role of product owner in the product discovery process? Very, Joanna?
Yeah. So I think the one thing that we also talk about in the book is that entire life cycle and the customer problem, which is the first part where we're doing the product discovery, is where the product owner is very involved in, because they need to discover like who's my customer, what's the product. Peter talked about the value proposition canvas. There are other tools out there that could be done, identifying personas and who your customer is, and then doing a customer journey map is very important to do during these discovery phases. And you can definitely do discoveries in an iterative way. So there are all these ways of doing it, just incrementally get there discover more. So at the beginning, you'll discover some, and then you'll continue to discover as you go. The more you know, the more will take you there to execution.
Great. So our next question: how product owner can determine the idea is worth the investment? Yeah, so this is why we wanted to touch on benefits in the book and talk about, you need to understand what benefits the product is delivering to the organization. So that's part one. So you got to understand what the benefits are. Second is you have to understand how you're going to measure those benefits to see if you're successful. So with that, you can then determine what the value is to your organization. Similarly, you have to ask the same question. Well, what's the value to your customer? But ultimately, it's through that, looking at the benefits, looking at how you expect the various features you can add to your product or the investments you make to the product, will be able to adjust the metrics that you're using to show your organization's benefit. You can determine whether or not the investment is necessary. So we know many of us, certainly in my case, I got trained on using return on investment, right? A strictly cash analysis of looking at how much more money am I going to have coming in through benefits or through improved productivity or through sales, I should say, or revenue coming in, and then how much is it going to cost me in meeting a threshold. That can be important for many organizations still, but is that really what is the most important thing to look at? And what are the other benefits? So there are other metrics that have come up, looking at, how employee satisfaction or net promoter scores, customer satisfaction scores. These are all useful ones as well. Hard to necessarily say how they would fit into an ROI or if they can, but there can be a belief that if you've got a good net promoter score, you're going to get more sales, you're going to get a better brand recognition. That will add value. So if you can move your if you can move your net promoter score, then you can add value. So not a simple question to answer, a very important one to answer, and one that a product owner, as we talk about in the book, needs to think about and be able to articulate what are the benefits that the product is delivering and how you're going to measure that to show that you are delivering the value and getting the value for your investment. Joanna, anything you want to add?
Yes, and I think related to that value, because you definitely want to make sure that your product is right for the customer. It's also addressing a problem or a pain. So that would be the first question that you want to identify. What's the customer problem that I'm trying to solve here? Because customers are willing to pay for resolving their own problems. So that's the one thing that you want to look at. And then, find the right solution. So minimizing the costs will also be a great way to look at that. So, okay, I'm solving their problems, but also I make sure that I make money, because at the end of the day, you want to be profitable.
So next question, Selena is keeping a question bank full here. Thank you, Selena. So to what extent the product owner should participate in planning? Greatly. The planning part becomes very interesting when you're using an iterative approach. You're time boxing your product development, so you only can have so much time in order to complete the next release or the next increment. There's a product owner that needs to make sure that the highest value features or items are being delivered. So the product owner has to make sure that they're there advocating for the highest value features to be going into that particular iteration cycle, or sprint, if you wish, from the software side. Now, there's other elements that come in, right? So you have to think about whether it's technically feasible at this point in time, that they're not interdependent, that you have the resource skills that are available. So we have to balance all of this, but it's the product owner that needs to advocate for the value. Joanna?
So in my world, I can tell you, point blank, the product owners are leading the planning sessions. So they own the planning sessions. It's their backlog. So they have to basically be equipped to not only understand what everything is in that backlog, but also help the team prioritize. So they are leading the sessions. They are the ones, there to make sure that that all these items are discussed and prioritized properly. Any other questions? These are great questions, by the way. I think we are having so much fun. Oh, that's a great question about the name of the book, Gen P. So I don't know how we came about it, but I think we had a couple of names in mind. So we put it on a board and we've been talking about it. I think I had a little bit of a dream. I think I was the one that actually started because I dreamt a little bit about, this idea of new generation or Gen. So thinking about Gen X and Gen Y, and we thought that, would be a catchy title to do the Gen P. And, that could continue as a trend. I don't know, maybe we can continue with different other gen letters to identify other roles out there that are worth discussing and elaborating.
So the definitely Gen P, thank you, Joanna. And Joanna gets the credit. I'm glad she shared the story. The P was for product owner. Maybe the P in another version might stand for project manager or program manager or portfolio manager, or who knows. But certainly the idea was that we wanted to build on this idea of a generation of product owners who care about their products, who care about making sure they deliver value, who provide leadership in their organization for their product, who will go out and continuously look for ways to improve their product to make it valuable as we go along. But thank you, that was a great question.
Okay, so that's another great question about organizations trying to become agile. I'm an agile transformation coach, and there is a lot to talk about here. Like we can spend an hour just talking about how to educate stakeholders about implications. Treat it as a transformation, as a big change to the organization. And set those expectations that there will be a lot of changes coming to the organization. So not only from a structure perspective, but also from a work perspective, the ways of working are very important. And then everything will eventually transform. So a lot of education to the stakeholders, from starting with the top, doing a lot of training from the top of the organization to the bottom. Right now, I am conducting training for the teams, like at different levels of the organizations. We really need to focus on the training and changing that mindset. So the mindset is very important.
Yeah, it's a culture that has to change. You can certainly feel free to get them a copy of our book too.
Yes.
Yeah, an interesting question about percentage of a time a product should for understanding customer needs.
A lot of time, spent in that, and it's about surveys, it's about discussions with customers, it's about being a customer yourself, and just spending as much possible. Like if we said that the project manager spends 90% of their job talking or communicating, probably the product owner spends 90% of their time understanding the customer. So that's their main responsibility and accountability.
Hard to put a percentage. It will change from industry and from company to company, but it should be, as you said, a majority or significant high percentage. That's your job, is to make sure you're understanding the customer, how the product's being used. And of course, remember, to do things well as a product owner, you want to have a product team who can have different roles. And we talked about product owner versus product manager and a product leader and so on, where there can be different roles to, maybe some people will be more outwardly facing, talking to customers, where others can be back more focused on getting the product features done and helping support that as well.
Which practices and frameworks you recommend to learn about customer needs? So there are different ways. I mean, one of the things that we mentioned here is the customer journey map. And in order to get to the customer journey map is to identify who your persona is. So who's the archetype from a customer perspective? So there are different steps to get there. To identify personas is an entire process of reaching out to your existing customers or potential customers if your product is new, to identify first of all, the segments of your customers, and then based on those segments, create a profile of a particular segment. Sometimes you end up with, 2, 3, maybe 5 personas that you have. I've seen organizations doing more. I think less is more because you want to narrow that and also prioritize those personas. I mean, sometimes a persona represents 80% of your customer segments, and you want to focus on that persona to make sure that you keep them satisfied, you keep them happy, you build features for them. Because if they bring 80% of the revenue, you basically want to focus on them, and then you focus on the others as well, because you always have to look for ways of increasing that customer base and expanding. So as I said, persona, get into the customer journey maps. And then after you do the customer journey maps, you also have to do the value proposition canvas. So then now you map the customer to your product to understand the value you are giving to the customer and the pain you're trying to address.
We talk about a Japanese word gemba, going to gemba, which is walking in the customer's shoes, and cannot stress enough the importance of being a customer, going out and experiencing the customer as a customer, whether that is going to a store or going somewhere and buying your company's product, or watching customers do that experience. You've got to see what the customer is doing, what they're feeling. So, however you do that, whether you do it through focus groups, whether you do it through shadowing, whether you do it by being the secret shopper approach, whatever you do, you've got to use the product for sure. Okay, another question here. Sometimes the product vision and strategies are kept confidential as preventive measure from competitors. What will this impact? How will this impact the product owner work? So interesting story around this. So we have seen this being something that goes back 50 years, where strategy was kept locked up and no one was to know about it except for the privileged few. That has largely been changed now, surprisingly enough, that your company's vision is being argued today that this should be made public, and many organizations do. After all, to achieve your vision, you will need your customers, your employees, your customers, and even your competitors to know what your vision is to achieve it. Certainly in some cases, you think about competitors, you have to work together to expand the whole market. And if they know where you're going, then they might be able to say, well, I can support that because I want to expand my market as well. So yes, so the vision and so on, you should be quite happy to share with people. What you don't want to share is how you're going to get there, the roadmap, the value proposition, your backlog. You don't want to share that part. That's what becomes the secret sauce that you want to keep secret. So I would encourage you to think about a product vision, certainly as a high level, or even a level, something that you want to share with the marketplace to let you know what you're doing. Those very specific things from the backlog is something that you probably you want to keep somewhat confidential, and just remind your team of this as well. Even though in this day and age that's even harder, thanks to use of technology. Joanna, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at Tesla and Apple, they're definitely very secretive in terms of their product visions. But I think internally, they share that with the team, and they are very transparent from a internal process perspective. So they want the employees to actually know that vision, although they reinforce all the time that these are secrets about the company, and the employees are committed to keep that inside. But definitely, like as a product owner, share that with the team, share that with everybody, and get that information from organizations if they have that. Sometimes you also find out that organizations don't have a vision, or they don't have a strategy where they're going. So work with them to put that together.
Yeah, I think there's a funny story about Apple where in San Francisco, where one of the Apple employees was out testing a new version of the iPhone and at a local drinking establishment and a bar, and left the phone behind. And of course, it got out onto the press, and there was a big kerfuffle about, oh, look at this, the new design of the iPhone, and so on, about what it would do. Next question: at which stage the product owner should include team members in the product backlog refinement process? Joanna?
As early as possible. So usually the moment we have a backlog, we want to refine it with the team. So the process of refinement is a very interesting one because you want to get to the details. So the earliest you include the team, the better. So they understand those details of all the items or the features that you have in the backlog.
I think Selena has cut off the questions about here. The next one, it says last question, Joanna. So how the product owners should handle bugs and technical debt when many valuable new features are competing for resources, I should say.
Oh, that's a great question, because I think we're all going through that. So the prioritization process is something that product owners should learn about. What is more priority? A production bug or a technical debt, or a new feature for your customer that will generate more income? But even if that production bug has a big impact to your customer, you want to focus on that. So understanding the business value and the complexity of, addressing that error or building a new feature is very important. So look from those perspectives: business value and complexity, and set up the priorities.
Sorry, one more question. Go ahead. You're in charge of the time, Selena. Is there not a question or not? I can't. Yes, here's the question.
Where the product owner discuss the user story only in the product backlog refinement process, they discuss throughout. So whenever the team has a question, the product owner is there to discuss it. So it can be discussed during the iteration planning or sprint planning. It can be discussed throughout the sprint. So having particular sessions. Remember that the backlog refinement is a continuous process. So you can always, call a backlog refinement session to basically ask all these questions that the team has.
So although the last couple of questions in many ways may have been associated with the agile approach for software development, these are tools and techniques that can be applied to any sector that you want. Right, the idea of a user story, talking about the persona and what their need and what the value is, that applies to building a construction building, constructing a new building or a home. It applies to a consumer goods product as well as a software product. So don't think that some of these techniques are just suited for IT. They can be more broad and to other sectors as well. Okay, so just to wrap up, we got a couple of slides here. So as we mentioned, our book is a product, and we use that product to develop a course, which is based on the book, which is available on our website, newgenp.com. The course is an asynchronous course, so self-paced course. It consists of 8 modules. Each module surprisingly has 4 sections. You saw the titles of the sections as we were going through the book. Each section will consist of a small 8 to 10 minute PowerPoint deck with a voiceover, followed by an exercise. And we encourage you to complete the exercise and share it with us, and Joanna or I will review it and give you some feedback. We also have weekly Zoom sessions for you to drop in and ask any questions. At the end of when you complete all 8 modules, we'll give you a certificate as well as a digital badge that you can put on your LinkedIn profile. We generally find that our learners who are going through this will do about 1 session a week, but of course you can do it faster if you want. It really depends on what your time is and so on. It probably takes about half an hour or so to do each of the sessions. So I guess the slide deck's moving ahead here on me, saying we're running out of time. You've been very generous with your time. So we have a special offer for this course is regularly about $500 US, $499 I think. So half price at a $199 US, and available through the QR code that you see here. Available on NewGenP. Again, I'm being rushed along. I think I forgot to clear the timing on PowerPoint. In addition to the course, we've also made the Kindle version of our book on Amazon.com with a 60% reduction. It's normally on sale for $24.95. It's now available for $10 US until May 15th. So please go ahead and take advantage of that. We've done this. I mean, it's available for all of you on Amazon, but we've done it available for you. The QR code will take you to the Amazon.com page with our book on it. So please take advantage of that if you're interested in finding out more. As well, we're thrilled to say we've entered into a partnership with PMI, and we have a course available on their Ascent platform, Product Owners in Action. It's ascent.pmi.org. If you go there, you'll see our course. We're at the bottom row on the right-hand side, or just do Product Owners in Action, as you can see there. We can't give any discounts on that course, but you can certainly see it available. The course we've got some new concepts that aren't in the book in the course. Also, it's a live recording of Joanna and I. We had a lot of fun doing that, putting that together. So hopefully you'll enjoy that as well. We do have weekly webinars available on our website, including, monthly. Joanna's just looking at me. My goodness, what are you talking about, Peter? Monthly webinars. We have one coming out a week Friday at noon with Michigan Burtick on innovation and product ownership. We've also done 4 or 5 webinars on projectmanagement.com. We have another one coming up in June, so you can look for us there if you want more information. And of course, feel free to contact us at info@newgenp.com. Okay, I think that's the end of what we have to say, but thank you again very much for showing up here on Facebook Live or on Zoom, and for the great questions that you had. It was very enjoyable. So Selena, over to you for your final comments.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Peter and Joanna, for discussing about the book. It's always been a privilege, right, to understand the book from the author's eye and author's perspective. And so thank you for such a wonderful presentation. I think after our first Meet the Author session this year in January of Reboot, this is the second Meet the Author session having lots of questions. So thank you for answering all of them. And thank you once again for being with us.